Welcome to our Industry Chat. The members of Bloodhound Pix and an occasional guest give their no BS experiences with current aspects of the industry. Hi, and thank you for listening to this episode of Industry, where I talk to the Nightmare Kids, which are made up of Tony and Jade. Now, I had the pleasure of meeting these two when I lived in Los Angeles, and I was a projectionist at the Chinese theater where they both worked, and Tony and I bonded over horror movies anytime we had a break, and they were both some of the most passionate people that I've ever met in terms of wanting to do the work, but also in a way that felt genuine and never felt like they were trying to step on other people's backs or anything to get what they wanted. It was just always about making the art and doing what they loved. And I always appreciated that. They were some of the first people that I had in mind when I wanted to start doing this interview series. And it's a shame that it finally came about now, but it was great that we got to do it. And we go from topics all across the board to what it's like living in LA now in this 2020 era and how it's really shifted the industry and where do we go from there. Also, the topic of that we've brought up in this podcast as well of submitting to festivals and being an up-and-coming screenwriter. So listen up, because this was a very great conversation and incredibly comforting to kind of chat with them again because it's been too long. So enjoy. Tony and Jade, thank you so much for joining me as part of the Nightmare Kids.
What's up, man?
Hi.
So, it's been a little while since we've kind of spoke, besides messaging here and there, but
Yep.
And I know kind of your histories, but could you give our listeners kind of how you got started, what interested you and getting you started in the horror genre, and...
Yeah, so for me, I'm Tony, this is Jay, we're the Nightmare Kids. So, the thing that started me with horror was actually where I grew up, Craig. I'm from Long Island, Hempstead, Nassau County, and but most people know Long Island to be this rich area, and that's the place where Amityville horror started and everything like that. I was actually from a darker part of Long Island, not the rich preppy area. I was more from in the poverty, what you would call the ghetto. And I saw a lot of things with that, I saw, honestly, I saw a lot of killings and things of that nature. And, the only escape for me was to be able to write, to write poetry and write short stories, things like that. And then there was this one movie that got me into horror, which was this movie called Tales from the Hood. Yeah. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Yeah. So this was the journey into my whole horror journey. When I first saw Tales from the Hood by Rusty Condis, it was something that was so amazing for me. I was around 9 years old when I first saw it, and it was it was a movie that held up a mirror to the things that I was witnessing, whether it was the racism and just the police brutality and the stories about African Americans and our own dark horrors within our households. That movie was the thing that set up everything for me, and then I just went down this dark rabbit hole after Tales from the Hood. And here's Jade.
Okay. I am from Baldwinsville, New York, which is a little subsection of Syracuse, New York. And I grew up, I've always been pretty creative. My grandma was an artist, and my mom was already a horror buff. So on top of being shown it and Salem's Lot and Cherry and all that kind of stuff at 6 years old, I was also learning how to draw, coming up with my own superheroes and stuff, and kind of locking myself away and drawing, all the worlds I wanted to exist in. And so definitely I would say my mom influenced me with horror because it was always around. I gravitated more towards a good dark fairy tale. Or I don't know if you've ever heard of the movie Legend with Tom Cruise. Yep. Yeah, that movie was high fantasy, creepy, whole characters, the goblins. It was so creepy. And then it, of course, scarred my mind like everybody else of my age.
Yeah, Tim Curry is amazing in it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit down with the camp that was like, there'll never be another Pennywise. But, you know, I think Bill Skarsgård actually, especially in number 2, he took it and ran with it. But yeah, I've just always gravitated towards like darker, creepy. And when I decided I wanted to go to college in Herkimer, New York, I didn't know that there was already a weirdo there waiting for me.
Yeah, that's actually how we met. How we met. We both went to Herkimer College, upstate New York, and then like, you know, how we met was we were in a talent show, and within this talent show, I was like doing music, rapping, and Jay was singing, playing the piano, and then like we had this connection of like, you know, that from music, and then us like knowing that we had this connection from music, we went to like, you know, hang out, and we would go to our dorm rooms and have these talks, and I saw Jay was like drawing these amazing like drawings, and I was like, wow, this is cool. And
I think what brought us together on the movie front was definitely Tony had held this big special screening for all the students because he got really inspired when he saw Django when it came out, Django Unchained. Okay. And I never saw it, and I was like, what is this movie? So we go up to the screening, and I was like, yo, this is like crazy. And honestly, I think that may have been the first time I really viewed a Quentin Tarantino movie.
Yeah.
So it was a cool story, a dope director,
right?
And then you were showing it to me, and you were coming at me like being a rapper, good at wordplay and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, so it was like just a big mind-melding experience. And then I was like, oh, this guy's got the eye.
Yeah, it was crazy, man. Because like when I was in that college, and I was like majoring in criminal justice, and this actually was I always knew I wanted to do film, but I didn't know if I could do it. And I remember, like, to be honest with you, Greg, like, I was fucking homeless, bro. Like, I was homeless, and I was with one of my friends, and we went to see Django Unchained. And when we saw it, I was just like, what am I watching? And, like, it just, like, it triggered something in my mind to go down the whole film journey. Like Tales from the Hood was the horror for me, but Django was like the film journey. So next semester when I went back to college, like I took film theory, and then I just fell in love. And you know, me and my professor, we just like clicked, and he was like, "Man, you should like do film." And I was like, "Yeah, you know." And I just started like watching more dark horrors and. Like, I've always been watching the horrors, but I go deeper after Django.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's always an interesting thing, how you kind of both discussed it, is this concept of the fan versus really going in with that critical eye. Especially with horror, you have people that will love whatever the Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and so on and so forth, but then there's like those two levels where it's that, and then it's that really deep dive into the kind of this subject matter.
Right, definitely.
So after that, you two then moved to Los Angeles, that's where I ended up having the pleasure of meeting you, and we kind of worked together for some years.
Right.
And then you went to film school out there too, if I remember.
Yeah. So basically, before we even came to Los Angeles, like we lived in this place called Rome, New York, and
which is a haunted town.
Oh yeah, we're actually writing a script about this city as well. We got something on that. We actually lived in a haunted apartment, believe it or not. Yeah, and Rome, New York is like a crazy place, bro. We lived there for a whole year, and me and Jay, we just started like pitching ideas and writing movies. Right?
Yeah, it was just the town is built over a big battleground, I guess, in one of the wars. So it's just over a bunch of dead bodies, and it definitely has a happiness to it. And amidst us like coming up with ideas for things, Tony started having crazy sleep paralysis.
Yeah, man.
Like every night.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's been I've had, since I was a kid, I've always had sleep paralysis, but it only happens in places that are dark. Okay. Like, believe it or not, it's kind of weird. That's another thing that like drove me to horror.
And probably off the back of him having the sleep paralysis, the started coming up with, like, what could that entity be? And then started, expanding our brains with darker stuff. And then we were like, some of this stuff could probably be a movie. Wouldn't you watch, like, what we're talking about? And we're like, yeah. And so we started writing some script just on pen and paper. And then we were like, well, what are we doing with this? And we're like, are we going to take this seriously or not? A friend had told us about LA Film. And we literally, the week before, we sold all of our stuff on a plane.
Yeah, we sold everything that we had in an apartment, and we sold our car that we had, and we just done for Los Angeles. And we went to film school. I went for film, Jay went for animation. And we just grinded it out, and it was an amazing experience. It was well, not to say amazing. It was good. I thought it could have been better. It wasn't like a UCLA film school or USC. It's a different kind of teaching, but it was cool. It taught us what we needed to know, and we learned a lot about ourselves. And then we got jobs at the Chinese theater, and that's when we met you.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what's crazy, Greg? Us, because we met at the Chinese theater, and it's just crazy that I remember doing projection, when I was doing the training for projection.
Yes.
I used to be scared to go to the IMAX room, man.
Oh, really? That's.
I'm scared. I used to get goosebumps, when I walk down that hall. I don't because you guys were training me, and then when I started doing it by myself, it just, I don't know. In that area, I always felt uncomfortable. Where in the Grommen area.
No, so it's weird because kind of when I was there, I don't know if you remember or not, but I was basically I was one of the regulars, but I was one of the main kind of closers for the most part.
I remember.
Yeah, and so I would be there, the last person at 2, 3 in the morning, and I'd have to do Grommens and shut everything down, and even with the IMAX, I had to go into the basement and all of that area. I remember for all of those years, people talking about seeing things and having these experiences and that were very real, but then I just didn't know from my own personal beliefs or whatever, but I just never, I somehow never had any, but and I was there almost every night, but then I'd hear stories like yours or somebody else where there's just this feeling that they had. Or I've heard Carlos, if you remember him, one of the other projectionists, he talked about working there with some construction workers at one point years ago, and they actually saw a figure brushing the curtains, walking by in the distance, and all some very crazy things.
Yeah, I heard about that story. Yeah, man, wow, that's crazy.
I mean, I don't know if you ever went down to the girls' bathroom, but there's all of us girls talked about. There's just an energy down there, man. It's just weird, but it's kind of funny that you bring up the Chinese theater being haunted. Because
also the weird thing is that maybe the entities or whatever it is that is there latches to some people, and some people are maybe it's just an energy thing.
Yeah, that's what with that type of chat, I've always heard that it's a person has to be open to, or has to have an openness to it or something like that. Because I think for myself personally, I'm always willing to side on the level of skepticism or very a scientific approach, so which probably wouldn't help me if I was to live in an actual horror movie, because I'd be the person that would go look where it came from and then whatever happens to them. But they talk about it being an openness that the individual has to have to the spirituality.
Right. I don't know if you ever heard about it, but we actually shot a film there. Yeah, this is an exclusive that what we did there, Craig. Have I ever told you about this?
I remember I was actually the night because you guys scheduled a night, and I was supposed to be the last. I was the last person there that night, and so I was leaving everything on, and I was supposed to set it all up for you, and then I think
so you were our culprit.
Yeah, man. We it was an amazing experience. the security guard at the time. I forgot his name. I think Alejandro. I think his name was. Yeah, but he let us in, and you know, we had at least about like 30 people there. We were shooting this found footage film about like these 4 kids in film school trying to find some truth in Hollywood. So they broke into the famous Hollywood theater, and then they invoked the spirit, and like all hell broke loose in the theater.
One of our actors actually, we went up to the projection area behind the screen, and one of our actors actually had a full-blown panic attack.
Mm-hmm.
He just felt like it was like everything was too much. And then a girl had a panic attack too.
Yeah.
Two of our actors did, a girl.
Yeah.
But I think it was cool because it was also equal parts like, ooh, we're doing thing maybe we're not supposed to, but we're sacrificing for the footage, guerrilla style, but also a complete crash course in like movies aren't just pointing a camera. It's not as easy as you might think it is. We ran into obstacles and a bunch of stuff.
It was really a good experience, man. Like it was a story that we wanted to tell. Like this was my thesis project. Like, you know, it was called The Screening. We have a sizzle reel for it. I'll send that over to you so you can check that out. But it was pretty cool, man. But I think that, like, you remember the time when found footage films were like really like hitting hard?
Yes. It was after. There was Paranormal Activity, and then there was a ton, I remember, when we worked there, but that was that boom where it was like 5 to 8 years where it was just everybody was doing a found footage movie, you know, multiple times a year.
I'm actually kind of pissed that stopped. Like, that was, like, I'm not going to lie, bro. I like that. Like, I know, like, there's a lot of people that don't like that style of filmmaking, but I love found footage, man.
No, so I was kind of always, because I was never, for some reason, Paranormal Activity didn't get me, but it wasn't until later I started rewatching or seeing other ones, and I watched movies like The Bay. Or and there was a couple others. There was some I can't remember off the top of my head. Some Japanese found footage films, and those just like wrecked me. You know,
there's one that I recommend that me and Jay watched. That was like kind of, it was weird to us. It was called the Poughkeepsie tapes.
Does that sound? Oh yeah.
Yeah, the Poughkeepsie tapes, man.
I haven't watched it yet, but I've heard people talk about it.
That one is awesome. My favorite, if I had to say specifically, is As Above, So Below. As Above, So Below is my favorite found footage film.
Oh, okay. Oh, great. Yeah, I've only seen like half of it. Or some. It's one of those ones that I'll start, but then it's always late at night, and then I find myself falling asleep, so I have to turn it off.
That was a great film. And you know what's weird? What's weird is that I remember being in film school, and my teacher, because I had pitched it, and he was like, oh, yeah, he was like, this is like the style right now. He was like, to be honest, he's like, I don't like found footage films. And he actually said, like, this is not going to go far. This is like, and I was like, nah, man, I think this could be the future, maybe. And he was right.
Oh, yeah. No, it's an interesting thing. I think when it's done well, like, you could say that with any medium or any style. If it's done well, it can be outstanding. But then I know during that time there are the ones that you could tell that were just like those cash grabs that I think kind of ruined.
Oh, definitely, of course.
But no, that kind of gets into, I guess, the whole concept of working in this industry during kind of modern era. If you want to talk about that, and then then of course we're going to go into the elephant of the room of the industry, post, I guess, 2020 with COVID, George Floyd and Black Lives Matter with the Me Too and everything. So I'd love to hear his talk about it. And because found footage to me is even though it was done there was Cannibal Holocaust and a bunch of other movies, early on, but found footage really found its, I guess, stride in the with kind of more modern technology. And especially now we're starting to see this move into, while there was The Host that is doing incredibly well, but are we going to start seeing, which we'll get into that I'm assuming later with the future of horror and all of that, but that these Zoom movies or these things like that. But yeah, what has it been like into kind of this modern era and trying to get your name going, because I know both of you working together with as the Nightmare Kids, you haven't even looked at, or you don't do just film, but animation, comics. You worked on, I know, a novel series.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. So like so basically you're asking like the future of what's the future of cinema?
I was we'll get into that. I was jumping ahead of myself, but if you want to for right now just talk about I guess what it's been like, I guess, up until this 2020 year, trying to really make it, and I guess the hustle, the word I don't want to use, but the hustle of it, I guess.
Well, I mean, it's kind of funny. I was just telling Tony, so Tone Watch is a lot of, which maybe I should do a little bit more of, but Tone Watch is a lot of kind of what you were talking about earlier, the videos where they're like, all right, so here's how I think, this script should go, or here's a good process for competitions, or this or that. And I always kind of steer away from them because I feel like everyone breaking through is so completely subjective based on, of course, the whole old Hollywood adage, like, it's all who you know. I think that that's incredibly true. And then also, there is race components. There is, when you're a female, are you attractive? Are you show-offable? There is the who you know factor. There's the, are you willing to go to the parties and all that kind of stuff. And I think that has been a consistent thing. Like, I do think sometimes talent is sacrificed for the, are you the loop out here? And I think sometimes talented people kind of get left by the wayside, and, people who are willing to play the game a little bit more get scooped up. But maybe, I don't know, what do you think about that,
I think that, it's all about what you do. Like, I think that, it's like Craig said, we're going into a new age of filmmaking, so I think Hollywood is dead, to be honest with you. This is my personal opinion. I think Hollywood is dead, and I think that it's not going to be a who you know, or it's just what do you do, and how do you do it.
I think now it's going to be...
Yeah.
But I think that before, almost every stereotype about Hollywood is true. Like, how hard it is, you got to know somebody, all that kind of stuff. And I think for you and I, knowing that we're kind of a machine where we crank out concepts really fast.
But I also kind of disagree, because I think that you could. It depends on what you do. I mean, if you are a writer, if you're a writer, if you're a writer, it's definitely going to be harder for you, right? Mm-hmm. But as a filmmaker, look at you can get your hands on a Blackmagic camera, so you could write I could write a whole bunch of short, and just I could get in the game. So I would say it depends on what Hollywood are we talking about, because if you want to go back the past 6 to 7 years, you could have done it like David F. Sandberg.
That is true.
You know what I'm saying?
Studios like A24 and Focus and stuff, they pick up stuff with even their filming feature films in my hometown. They're winning awards. Yeah. So part of it is just
I mean, I honestly, I think that David F. Sandberg is probably one of the people who kind of started the game of hey, get yourself a camera, and he's a guy that not to say that he writes amazing shorts and things of that nature, but he has great ideas, and he takes his ideas and just shoots them and puts them out on a platform like YouTube with just him and his wife, and he just got on with that, James Wan caught a liking to him, and he's going on his 4th feature film now.
Yeah, I know, because he got really popular with Lights Out, if I'm correct, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the show,
right.
Yeah. No, but I think that's a kind of a great thing to really talk about, is the idea of making your own, and then it becomes that, which I think a lot of writers, especially, writers going into wanting to make their own stuff, because, that's what, especially with this modern era, that's kind of where it's told, like you were saying, with it being hard on just being strictly as a writer. And so, but there's also that aspect where I know a ton of them that are okay, well, I'm going to make my own movie now, but then not really realizing there is that difference between a written script and then a shooting script, and then, shooting on a no-budget script. So I know, because I was saying just a moment ago, I know a bunch that will be oh, this is going to be a very cheap script. This thing I wrote out, and then we actually take it into, or whoever takes it into production. It's like, well, not real, because now you have to start accounting for the series of, all these different things. The special effect that you think might be cheap isn't, and
right.
accounting to a bunch of money where
it's so crazy. You're absolutely right. Like, it's me and Jay, we have fell victim to that a lot of times of, like, we've had this idea, and then we're like, oh man, like we can do this, and then once you start shooting, you start realizing, like, oh man, like I'm gonna need money for this, like whether it's makeup or whether it's just food for, like, if you have other hands that's gonna be helping you, so like it's always one of those things.
Like, definitely that our first vandalism run at that, trying to film in the Chinese theater showed us that we had a nice, like, a decent tiny little pocket of what we had to work with.
Right.
And we were like, oh, this is funny because it's, grassroots sound footage. It's got, what could be so expensive?
Right.
And then it was like, day 2 went by and we're like, oh, wait, how much do we do? Oh, day 3. Oh, wait, that much now? And it definitely showed us, like, but it showed us to be thrifty, too, and, like, to figure out, we have a short that's called The Chair that is on YouTube, and we only spent money on craft service for that, for the people that were in the movie.
Right.
Everything else was completely free.
Yeah.
We just worked with our alleyways, our chairs, our everything.
I think it's, for us, we specifically, like, learned, like, how the budget will go, like, you know what I mean? It's like, basically, the only thing I don't like about it is, like, it's like a marginalization of your imagination, because, like, you start to think of, how can I shoot this and not go big, that's the only thing that, like, that it's kind of, like, tricky with me. Like, because I like to, when I'm writing, I don't like to hold back on my imagination. But, like, then when because you'll have this thought in your mind, and you'll have the process of how you want to tackle it. But that there will be other aspects that you're gonna need, like, oh, how am I gonna get this apartment? Oh man, like, am I gonna need this permit? Like,
And that's what kind of constant sort of, like, frustration with me coming from upstate New York, where, if there calls for a corner store in our script, I know a corner store where you would just be like, hey man, we'll buy $50 worth of stuff and they'll let you film in there. Where out here, it's like, you gotta go to Film LA, you gotta get a permit, you gotta have a time frame. It's so much, like, antiquated, systematic stuff that if you think about it, specifically living in Hollywood, it could kind of axe out some of the poor people trying to make films, where, it's the place you have to be, but it's also, like, you also have to have the money and have the know-how and connections,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I can agree with that totally. I know for this podcast, we have tried some ventures in doing, short films and things like that of that nature, and that's been one of it, is where, my own parents live in northern Michigan area, which is very rural, and it's kind of been this thing of, like, well, instead of shooting, since the three of us are across the Midwest, instead of shooting in Chicago, where one of our members are, or things like that, or, LA, where we have some actors that we'd like to use, well, is it better to just say, well, let's just get a couple of people out here where we can, shoot on a person that I know has 100 and some acres, and, I know I can utilize this restaurant or whatever because I worked there as a teenager, or things like that. So does the
so amazing.
Yeah, does the whole concept, I guess, of, or what is it like, I guess, shooting in LA, and is it almost worth it to just, is that why people are moving out and saying, well, let's shoot elsewhere, and then things like that?
I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah, I don't think it's, I don't think LA is worth it at all. Like, it's like, unless, the only way I would say LA is worth it is if your story specifically called for Hollywood.
Yeah.
If you needed to see, like, the stars on Hollywood Boulevard, but, like, how many?
If you have the money to pay for a sound station and stuff like that.
Right. How many movies? I mean, specifically, me and Jay were in a movie that called for that, which was the Fanatic. I mean, that film. that's a movie that like called for like you had to be specifically in Hollywood for, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And I remember because I texted you after I watched The Fanatic, and then I remember seeing the scene and going, "Oh, that's Tony." And that's
yeah. It was a cool. The Fanatic was a cool experience.
But see, like that's the thing too. Is I think that the fanfare of there's like Hollywood is the place, the city of dreams, and like you can bump into Idris Elba getting coffee at Coffee Bean. Like I think that still is why there's such a gravitational pull out here. But I think that that's like combating with the fact that like, Get Out only cost $5 million. They filmed in I think Connecticut.
They filmed in Alabama.
Alabama. In $5 million, Jordan Peele made a monumental film with detail, with amazing characters, with amazing imagery, with an amazing twist that is starting this renaissance now of all these, a little bit more budgeted but bigger creatives. I think in the sense of the word itself, and especially giving bigger light to minority creators and creators, all that kind of stuff.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, that's what I would say. You definitely don't have to be in Hollywood. I like if someone were to ask me, I wouldn't even recommend like the Hollywood notion, like thinking like, oh, I have to come here to like make it or do it. Like, I think that like some of the best work is outside of Hollywood. Like it's not like, you know what I mean? Like just for like the only reason I would say one would have to come to Hollywood is if you had to do the studio, talks or the red carpets, which I think is also another thing that's going to be like dead soon. I don't think that we'll see like red carpets as you see like people are doing Zooms now. Yeah. Like even we just watched the Lovecraft Country, which is a great show, and like right before they premiered the show, like they had this Zoom just breaking down the characters and how they went into it. Like
before they would have been in the studio.
Right. Well, I mean that would have been like a Q&A or a red carpet, but you know what I'm saying? So this is the future.
Yeah, no, that actually helps kind of bring in where I'm going next is, I mentioned prior, but now, we're here at the elephant in the room is 2020 and, with COVID and mainly COVID is what's separating us, but then the elements of, George Floyd and Black Lives Matter and the, just all of these different aspects of kind of really shaping the industry. And I think, you look at, again, like Jordan Peele's Get Out, which you were saying, Jade, but then how up until this point, there was kind of this shift of where you either had $200 million movies, or you had movies for under 10 million, or a lot, or even under like 2 now, or stuff like that. I'm curious how you think it's going to, with everything, is there going to be a way to go back? Or are we kind of past this point of no return?
If I'm being honest, in my personal opinion, I mean, like you said you're from Michigan. The movie Don't Breathe? Yeah. Yeah, that was filmed all on the Detroit streets because of vacant houses and stuff like that. Yeah. Pete, I was going to say Buttigieg, what is his name? Pete Davidson. He just had The King Staten Island, and then he had the Grown Up movie. He filmed that on Staten Island and then in Syracuse, New York. So, like, I think that the more that we saw a movie that broke ground, like Get Out only had $5 million, and then movies like Green Room, like all these like A24 movies, they're showing us that, like, even honestly, if you could save up $20,000 and you budget it super tight, you don't have to be in Hollywood. If you've got the eye for it, Quentin Tarantino could most likely film on a budget of $5,000 if he really wanted to. Make some little short movie, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it all comes down to the creative, and I think maybe that's why Hollywood might be shaking a little bit, is because I think we are starting to realize, like, oh, we could probably put that as a webisode. We could start that, like Broad City started on the internet, Insecure started on the internet, and it just takes the initiative, I think, to do it, and you don't really got to spend millions of dollars, if that answered the question.
Oh, definitely, yeah. No, and then, and that's actually brings up some great points, and I know, kind of getting into it more about looking at theaters and how in Traverse City, which is kind of nearby where my parents live, that's where they filmed what was it? The Wretched or whatever, the one that dominated for weeks and weeks the box office because it was the only movie that really came out at the drive-in. But so yeah, things moving to drive-in, and then as we kind of talked about prior and hinted at a little bit too of this, we realizing that before, I remember people saying that, well, I always want to be ready, even those that didn't live, if they lived in New York, they said, I'm always ready to go on the plane to fly to LA and have a meeting if I need to. But we're kind of seeing that, well, with Zoom, you don't even really need to go to LA to necessarily do anything. You just have a Zoom meeting, and it's just as effective, if not more, sometimes.
Absolutely. Like me and Jay, we were in we were in this competition called Screencraft, and we made it to the end of the fellowship program, and we at the end of the program we had Zoom calls, and we could have been anywhere in the world, and we were literally in Los Angeles, and we remember speaking to the guy who kind of started it, and she asked us, like, so where you guys living? And we were like, Los Angeles, California. And he was like, oh, okay, cool. And it was just like, it wasn't a big deal to be in Los Angeles, California, and I was like, wow, like that being in that competition and seeing, like, getting to the end of it, like, we were finalists, and, like, seeing that it really didn't matter us being in Los Angeles. It was just like, wow, we could have been anywhere in the world and done this, like,
But, I think that writers can be anywhere, and even directors, because, David Sandberg's just at home, and he just films, how many? 2 shorts? Mm-hmm. Since he's been in lockdown.
Yep.
But I think that as far as the Hollywood industry, I think that LA actors are really worried right now.
Yeah.
Will things ever go back to normal? Will it be the same?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I would be very nervous if I was an actor right now, and I think that, like, you would have to, like, this is one of those things, you would have to look back and be like, hold on, let me take a look at what I'm doing, and you have to go into different avenues. It's not just acting now. You probably see more actors become writers, or more actors trying to direct themselves. Like, if not, you could get, like, lost in this whole shift of where the industry is going, because honestly, I don't think movie theaters are going to come back. I think that, like, for the next year or two, like, drive-ins will probably be very, very good. I mean, you see AMC now, they're doing the 15-cent movies, and, like, I honestly don't see, like, theaters coming back from this. Like, I mean, Netflix probably was ahead of its time, man.
Yeah. No, I know that's kind of, what the general kind of consensus I've gotten through a lot of these interviews is this idea that, like, theaters were planning, they were slowly shifting that way prior, but they're shifting to this point of, once when they do come back, or if they do, where it'll be like for the Marvel movies or whatever, and then everything else will just start being online, or being, they might have a little run here and there, but for the most part, everything will be online. And a lot of these companies are even finding that they've made more money doing it that way, of just, doing the $19 for a ticket, where you get the movie for 48 hours on video on demand or whatever. And
I think if you think about it, what did most of us want to even go to the movies for? Is because it is like a communal experience. It's like, oh, everyone's, getting in the seats, and everyone's bustling around, and grab your popcorn, grab this. Someone's talking over there, someone's listening over there, someone's laughing over there. Oh, the movie's starting, everyone's quiet. And for me and Tony, we've always personally, like, there's certain theaters out here we won't go to, because we know that there's going to be teenagers that are all laughing, or this theater has a very talkative audience. And, like, for people like us who like to be home and in our own little caves, I mean, it's kind of like, why go to the theater anymore? And I think that's what they're worried about.
I mean, like, it's kind of one of those things to really think about. Like, I think that this is going to also be a big impact on budgets. Like, I think that what happens, COVID is going to be like have a backlash of like what happens to the theater, and then that's going to have a backlash of what happens to the studios, because like now you're going to see like, okay, what do we do for budgeting? Because now you got all of these people that are sitting on movies that literally can't put them out. Like I've been thinking about like, what is Christopher Nolan gonna do? Like Christopher Nolan's got a movie coming out.
New Mutants?
Like no, actually, New Mutants comes out August 28th, and they're releasing that in theaters. So hold on, I'm gonna get to that. But what I'm saying about the Christopher Nolan, I've been thinking, I'm like, man, he's got this movie Tenet, which has Denzel Washington's son in it, and I know that like he shot it for big budget, like, but so now it's like he can't. He's in a rock and a hard place, because on one hand you got to be like, all right, now do I release this movie that I probably spent $300 million on? Do I release that in a theater, which I know a lot of people are not going to show up to, or do I release it like online? You know, and if I do that, how can we marginalize, or how can we like, you know, securitize, you know, people, like the money that they would get on tickets? Because like if you were going to the movie theater, like if me, you, and Jay were going to the movie theater, that's 3 different tickets. But if I were to watch it in my house, like that's one payment that I could have 2 people watch. So no matter how we look at it, we're gonna lose money. Yeah. You know what I mean? And now, like, there's a movie I've been waiting for that's gonna be coming on online, which is Antebellum, which is like a horror film that has Janelle Monáe. And I've been waiting to see what they were gonna do with it, you know. And they're not gonna put it in theaters; they're just gonna release it online for a specific amount of time, and then they're gonna take it away, you know. And then you got people that are like the New Mutants, which has been reshot August 28th. They're coming. I saw like they're hitting theaters, so I'm trying to figure out how are they going to do this, you know?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it brings up some great points about like evolution of the industry, where you have a guest we had on prior who is an actor, and he primarily did theater, but he really talked about kind of the aspect of somebody like Christopher Nolan, who has to shoot on film, who has to shoot in IMAX and have all of this stuff. It's like, well, you know, and you were also talking, Jade, about, you know, Quentin Tarantino doesn't have to have all this budget. He could shoot a movie for less. So does it kind of show to these filmmakers that, well, you know, the industry's changing, the world's changing. You either have to come with us or you get left behind.
I mean, you look at, I know that me and Tom probably stand on different opinions on this. Mm-hmm. Some of the movies that I personally like, whether it's horror or other genres, are more like, they just look like real people walking around. Like right now I'm watching the show, I May Destroy You, from Michaela Cole. And she wrote it, and she directed a lot of episodes, and she's acting in it too, and she's amazing. And it looks like it's just the story of a girl walking around London dealing with a problem. And I think Jordan Peele kind of maybe messed it up for everybody else, because you're winning awards, you're getting nominated for stuff, you're acclaimed, people are still talking about Doubt, and it was like $5 million. Now, how much did it cost to do The Nightmare on Elm Street? How much did it cost to do Cloverfield, you know, stuff like that, the bigger things with CGI and everything? He consolidated it into a package that was, I think, maybe more monumental than that stuff.
Yeah, it's definitely, you're going to have to, like, really, like, I mean, if you're a Steven Spielberg or a Michael Bay kind of shooter, you're definitely going to have to, you know, look at where the industry is going, and, you know, you're not going to be able to get those big budgets, so you're going to have to, you know, try to shoot in a different way. But on the flip side of that, it's good for like indie filmmakers and people that are coming up, like, you know, people like us who can just get their hands on a camera, like, because cameras are cheaper now. You can get like a Blackmagic or a Red Kimono that's coming out for $6,000, you know, and I'm shooting in 6K. I'm doing 8K. I can shoot 4K, and I can shoot, you know, something for a low budget, and I can get it to the platforms of a Netflix or YouTube Red or Hulu or even Shudder, who's like taking short films, and they've learned how to like do what Netflix has done for like short filmmakers, you know, and horror, you know, which is awesome.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I just got a GoPro, and I think that it's one of those things where, yeah, you can't do the zoom or stuff like that, but the GoPro itself is, a tiny little device, and it shoots in 4K. And so, and a lot of people's phones even now,
exactly,
can shoot better than, most cameras that I probably spent a lot of money on when I was younger.
Right.
I also think, too, now this could be the era of competition. Like, for example, Flanagan, he made Oculus as just a short film, and it was just, if you've seen the movie, the whole speech that the sister gives, the breakdown of the mirror, what happened, what her plan is to destroy it. His whole first short film of Oculus is just him sitting in front of a camera in a white room, the mirror's there, and it's just him ranting for 20 minutes. And he submitted it into a festival, and then somebody bought it. Now Oculus is a Hollywood movie. Yeah. And he's doing house and all that kind of stuff. I think that us doing writing competitions, we know that there's short film competitions too, and I think that this might be the era where, whether it's making a short film or writing a script, I think competitions are going to start stacking up material like never before.
That's actually a good topic to go into, because we kind of, a year ago, we tried to cover it a little bit, but we haven't returned to it since, because you've talked about submitting to competitions. I know I have, and really kind of deciding, because a lot of competitions have been, especially for horror, any major city now, it seems like they have multiple festival/competitions for horror. So it's, how do you know which ones to really submit to and that are worth it versus, because some of them, all they really give you are the laurels, which for those listening that don't know, laurels are, it's basically a little picture that says you were officially selected or you were a finalist or whatever.
Right.
But, so how do you choose where to submit to, and how can you tell which are worth or not worth it?
Right. So, for me, basically what I do is, I look at, what's some that have built traction and some that are the tops. Screencraft is, one of the best to me. Basically they hit with all genres. Yeah. And, me right now, specifically me and Jay have a screenplay.
We're in 3 different things.
Yeah, but we're specifically in the horror competition of Screencraft right now. We just probably 2 days ago just made the semifinals for. Yeah, thanks, man. It's for a script that we wrote probably about 2 years ago. And how we looked at it was we looked and we said, okay, which ones are the tops? Who you look at some of the judges who are going to be a part of these competitions, and you do your research. You can go on places you can look on YouTube and look at Film Courage, and some of these people, managers of Zero Gravity, they talk about some of these competitions, So you just got to just do your research and see which one fits me, who's the judge that's going in, who are some of the success stories that have come out of this. I've looked at, I've dived so deep into that, Craig. I've looked at, who are these people that have won, okay? And then I'll go on their Twitters or I'll go on their Instagrams and see what they're talking about, and Screencraft, has definitely been one of my favorites, actually.
Anyone who is curious of which ones you should go for, I would say Screencraft, the Script Lab, and then also the Nickel Fellowship.
Yeah.
That's a big one that everyone from NBC to Nickelodeon, everyone looks at the Nickel Fellowship.
Sundance Labs, yeah. of course, those, the ones that you would know, but so it's basically just doing your research and just seeing those success stories and the people that attach themselves to it from the big studios and big management agencies.
I don't know if you could actually ever really discern which competition. I think it's all just, you've got to throw your material out there. It's kind of throwing bait to fish. The more you throw out, somebody's going to bite at some point. It can be a little tiring sometimes, and you got to keep tracks and mark your calendars with days of the announcements and everything. But I think that we're seeing now that if you just have faith in the script you wrote, look at what you can submit it to. Kind of for Tone specifically, he really goes hard research on looking up every judge, success stories, everything like you said, and you know, just go for it. Worst that can happen is they say no. Either reassess your script or you go to the next one.
Yep, exactly.
No, that's great. And yeah, I guess that's always been a topic of conversation that we've had where, you know, there's some of them that they may be in their first year or they may not really offer anything, but are they worth it to, even if they're cheap, to even just get traction on your script to say, you know, to add those little whatever random city horror film festival USA, you know, type of thing? Does that still help a little bit, or is it just the kind of big ones?
Well, I know that like on Coverfly, which is the source that most of these competitions go through anyways, is Coverfly is kind of the database for all the scripts.
The contest.
You know, with everything, every contest that you get in, as long as you can break to the quarterfinals, you get an award on your screen page for that script. So even if you don't fully break through with a script that you submitted to 6 different competitions, but you at least got the quarterfinals, now when somebody's looking up your script, you have 6 awards. So it might make someone, you know, perk up their ears a little bit and be like, oh, I wonder what they're getting awarded for.
So literally what you're saying is that, like, you know, I mean, even though it might be like a first year competition, like if you look at like if that first year competition is attached to a place like Coverfly, you know, or you know, like that could be one of those things you look at. Or I mean, if it isn't, you know, you try to see if you can get in touch with like the people who are in control of that, you know. And I mean, if it's cheap, I would still go for it, you know. I mean, like, because you're still getting your stuff out there, and I mean, if you don't hear a response back from it, then you'll know, like, okay, maybe I shouldn't go with the smaller ones, the ones that are just starting up, and like let me try to go with the bigger ones. But like, I think that it doesn't hurt to like start with the smaller ones, man. The ones that don't have names or it's their first year, like definitely.
That's great advice to give to people. And I know, so you guys are kind of writing machines, and I know that's like one of those topics too of like writing for spec, or, you know, because some people will say, well, I don't want to write my whole idea down because I don't want to write it until I get paid type of thing, or especially if it's in spec, or there's, you know, other topics of conversation that I know I've faced personally as well, where a producer was interested in a script, but then was saying, well, I don't want to fully invest and attach myself until, like, if you can get a couple, you know, quote unquote named actors that are willing to do it, they don't have to officially sign a contract, but say we'd be interested in attaching our name if you get the funding, then I will help more and stuff like that. So do you primarily just submit to the festivals and that's what you would recommend, or would you also say of doing almost that kind of other work to get that script out there, to that business side of it?
We personally, you know, like we said before, that the whole thing at the Chinese theater, us trying to film our own movie, it was really a giant crash course in how much logistics goes into everything, and that was without, you know, an executive producer giving us funding and stuff like that. So I can only imagine it must be hard to try and attach people to a script where this might be your first time out. And I think that's why a lot of people do their own, like, indie movies with, like, you know, their friends. I think besides Shia LaBeouf, American Honey, the director of that movie, she said all those kids that were in that movie, all the teenagers, she just found them in different, like, parking lots around town or, like, fairgrounds and stuff. None of them were really actors, and I think she won a festival award for that movie. But we exclusively are kind of just doing competitions right now, and, you know, keeping our nose to the grindstone with that. I mean, I don't know if you agree, Tone. We've seen the results like before.
Definitely. I don't agree with, like, if someone were to tell me, like, you know, oh, I don't want to give you any money unless you have a big name or something like that. Like, I mean, we have all these platforms. Like, so I wouldn't really listen to someone who was telling me that I needed to have names attached to something. I'm just gonna, like, find the people that I think is the best for my character and just go and shoot it. I'll write it and I'll shoot it. Like, I'll do it all myself, you know. That's the way that we're going, and I think that's the best way for anyone to go.
Also, being in such a digital age now, now, like, you know, take Generation Z, they are, but they're very technologically invested. And I think that if there are YouTubers making $60 million a year from just putting makeup on YouTube, and kids sit and watch that for 20 minutes, kids will sit and watch. You know, if you do like your own little 20-minute film, kids will sit and watch it, man. You know.
Right, and when I say like spec scripts are cool. Like you know, like for me personally, because me and Jay, we're more of the idea people. So like our brain goes and we can like create stories. Like so, I mean, I don't think that there's anything wrong with spec scripts. Like trying to get your name, your foot in the door that way. I just think that it's like a little harder for spec scripts because most competitions want to see like new material. Like they don't say, oh, well, I mean, I'm pretty sure that there probably are some competitions that like hey, a competition for a spec script. Like I know specifically Nickelodeon has like a competition where they like you can spec script off of some of their material, right? And but for me personally, I like to make a new world. Like that's the thrill for me of like, you know, playing God, if you will, like, you know, like creating this world and these characters that you've never seen before, and I'm using my imagination. And I think that goes well. But you can also do like a spec script, like if you wanted to write a short, you know what I'm saying, and write a spec and then film it. But I think that it would have a bigger bang if you were to write like your own story and film that, or write your own story and put that in a competition. I think that that's a easier way to get into the industry, and I think it has a better payoff.
Yeah, I think first you have to decide, because a writer is kind of an umbrella term, but I think first you have to decide, like, are you a writer-creator, or do you want to be like a staff writer on a show?
Right.
Because I do think that possibly if you're specifically going for spec script avenue, you may end up inadvertently kind of looping yourself into being looked at as, you know, just another head at the table.
A worker bee.
Yeah. Where if you are kind of like Saray or Michaela Cole, you might be like, you know, I have this sport. I think it's a cool idea. I'm going to upload it on YouTube just for kicks and giggles and see what happens. And people will look at you, I think, a little bit more esteemed. Like, oh, wow, you created this? And how much money did you have? $1,000. You made this? What?
Right. There's nothing wrong with being a script writer. Like, you know, because, like, those, believe it or not, those are two different talents, I think. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's some people that, like, you know, their mind goes through, like, you know, creating their own world. And then there's some people that, like, can help brainstorm those people who create those worlds and make their world bigger. Like, well, it's really two different like kind of talents, which is pretty awesome. If you can learn how to master both of them, man, you'll be ahead of the game. Like, you know.
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm in awful respect personally. I normally do always do original for my own creative outlets, but I know that's one of those things that, especially with kind of this modern age, and you have this, you know, fan fiction media, or a lot of people are making shorts based around, you know, pre-existing content. But what you kind of learn is that if you do that original, like you're saying, that it helps to show your voice. And I think that's what a lot of people are looking for, is they might hire you afterwards to work on some already bought property or a remake or a television show, but they at least want to know beforehand that you have kind of an original, you know, new voice that feels fresh or feels whatever, diverse. Or...
And you know what's the weird thing is, like now that me and Jade are going into, like, we've been in this competition thing, so now we're going into the avenues of major managers and agents, right? And like there are some management companies that like they want to grab people who are creating new material, and then there are some management companies that want people to be those spec writers. Like specifically, we've been in, like, you know, trying to get in talks with Zero Gravity, and Zero Gravity is basically a company that likes to have people that like create their own material, but they also like people who can do spec scripts as well. But then you have companies like Rain Management who like they literally like you know, people who are like more spec script writers. So like it's also like doing the research and then that avenue, like, in, you know what I mean? So it's weird how this thing goes.
If I could say too, if you can, you know, throw away the money every month. I think it's $9. Get IMDb Pro, because it makes a already hard system of trying to get in contact with people 10 times easier, where you can actually look up writers that you like. So say you like, Abby Jacobson. You can look her up, see who her management group is, check out that management company, see who are their literary managers, and then you can, submit specifically to that person so that it's not just sitting around in limbo on the front desk.
Right.
I would have to... I agree with that, because I think, especially even if you're sending out your query letters to these companies, they want to know that you like what they're producing. So as you were talking about, you can also, in that query letter, you can say, oh, I'm a big fan of, this, and this that you produced, or this, of this client that you have played a major part on me, and it shows that you've taken the time to care, rather than if you just write a quick email saying, hey, represent me, here's this.
Right, absolutely.
And definitely. Yeah, there is that kind of part that really shows it's not just like a business approach, but it also shows the human side of it, that you cared enough to see them too, instead of just promoting yourself.
Right.
Definitely. Yeah. No, this has been, amazing conversation, but I'd love to kind of hear all of the, since we're kind of wrapping up, and you've given great advice, and the self-promotion of how can people find you, what projects are you working on currently that you're willing to discuss, and...
Well, right now we are in, what are we in? Two or three, I think, screenwriting competitions. The first being that we are in the semifinals of the horror competition for Screencraft. And we got into that with our Project Paris. Okay. Do you want to pitch it? All right. I'll pitch it. So basically, Project Paris, loosely kind of inspired by Tony's upbringing in the project of Long Island and the chaos he had to grow up in. It's basically this family in 1998 New York. They get displaced. They have to move to these projects that the government is offering, free rent for a year, and which is already a fishy thing. And they soon kind of start to realize why rent is free for a year, and it's kind of suspicious that only Black people live there. I guess that would be the vague term I could put it in.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that we're working on. We also have a comic book that we're working on. We can't really talk about right now, only because it's still in the works. And so we're going full steam on that. I'm actually just freelance, freehand writing a script that I thought of, which is called Quarries. It's about this mermaid who haunts people when they come to the quarries, and it's a cool story. I'm just getting that out of my mind right now in a notebook. So and then we're just also just keeping an eye on the scripts that we have in our competition, which is we're in Screencraft Horror right now, and then we got the Slam Dance coming up in September, and that's what we're working on right now. Yeah,
it's just not in a braggy way. You said it. We're kind of can't stop ourselves from writing. So it's kind of once a project's done, throw it out into the universe, get it out into a competition, and then start working on the next thing until you hear feedback. And that's kind of what our process has been this last year and a half, 2 years.
Right. Also, we're we're also thinking about this short film that we want to do called Building 3 AMs. We haven't really got so deep into that right now because of everything else that we're doing. On top of us, trying to, also being a part of the exhibit, maybe leaving Hollywood, going back upstate New York, and, so that'd be a cheaper area for us, so we could, hit off our short films and be able to be in a more comfortable environment of just creating more product, more scripts.
I remember you saying that you've always kind of planned on moving back to New York.
Yeah.
So
this is the time. We think that right now is a great time for us to get out of here, and so we've been waiting. Basically, right now we're just waiting on this manager that has our material. We're waiting to hear back what he is gonna do with our material. and so we're going to see if we have to stay here or do we go back home. You know, because us getting into we got into the finals of the fellowship, and one of the top writers, you know, of Screencraft, you know, liked us and he's helping us get representation.
Congratulations! That's amazing.
Yeah. So you know, so that, and so now we're just waiting on, like, you know, this manager, see what they're gonna do, and then we're kind of like in a limbo, if you will.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All that sounds great, and it brings up, if you have a little bit more time, it brings up an interesting question that I was thinking about I wanted to ask, but then I lost it, and now it came back. About kind of the script writing process of, you know, you mentioned before that there was one of the scripts that you've been submitting is like a 2-year process, and I think there's this thought among people that, you know, you write the script, you may clean it up, you know, at least for writers just starting out, and then it's over. But, you know, you were saying that about 2 years. There's a script for myself even that, you know, I finally kind of solidified and said, okay, I'm going to walk away unless it ever gets barred, that type of thing. But that was like a 2-year process. And that even if you finish the script right away, there is, you know, the rewrite process, there's a lot more to it than that. Unless you're, you know, some big writer that gets your stuff bought right away, there is it's a years and years long journey that you're taking with these scripts, even if you're working on other stuff in between.
Yeah, I mean, for us, I can give 2 examples specifically. This year, during quarantine, actually, 2 of our scripts have gone higher than any of them before. One of them was a TV pilot. It's for a horror thriller called The Silent Suicide. That one actually went the furthest, and that one took way less time, right, Tom, to plan out and everything, versus Project Terrace, which is 2 years in the making. We had a whole different kind of plotline direction at first. We rewrote it. It's been edited so many times, and now that one is, you know, getting its footing now with the competition circuit. So I don't know if there's really a time limit to expect. I think it's kind of where the material is at.
The story, I'll say the story is like really in the rewrites, man. Like, it's like you know, like even something like Project Terrace right now, which is in the semifinals of Screencraft, like how we approach it is once we, you know, get into like different rounds, we'll look at the script again. Like, you know what I mean? What can we change? Like, what can we change different? Like, what is there? Like, what can we add? What can we take away? Like, you know what I mean? How can we make this bigger? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, also, it's those first 10 pages, like, what am I saying in those first 10 pages to keep them glued, like, keep this reader turning these pages, you know what I mean? So the story is always a rewrite, always in a rewrite, you know? I mean, because even in a competition, like, you'll look at it and you'll say, oh, wow, I just made the quarterfinals, but, like, now it's like, yeah, you made the quarterfinals. Now, how can I make this story better? Like, you know what I mean? You've let the story sit into a competition for maybe about 2 to 3 weeks or maybe a month. Now, how can you go back and get the rewrites and then polish this and make it better? That's what we're doing right now with our script being in the semifinals. You know, so just always rewriting, like taking some time away from it and then coming back to it, and you know, and you like I've learned with that, you always see the story with new eyes. Yeah. You might see it like, you know, oh, it's better than what I thought. Oh, it's not all the way there. Like, you know what I mean? There's some things that I can add to.
Also, criticism. Don't run away from it. Even us as a writing team, we're still 2 different people, 2 different like entities, minds, concepts, and everything. And you know, it could be your own teammate, or it can be the judging world at large with these competitions. Don't go into thinking like, all right, that's a clean 120 pages. I'll never touch it again. It's a masterpiece. Boom. You know, because this is a rejection industry, and you have to kind of thicken up your skin for it. And you might not always agree with the criticism, and sometimes you might even want to stick to your guns and not want to roll with the criticism that they give you. but just be prepared for that with competitions. Is that you're gonna get judged. Literally.
Yeah. And the story is never done. The story is never done. No matter what someone if that's the mindset you have, it's the wrong mindset. Like, the story always can be better, and it can always change.
Oh, that's perfect. I think that's kind of a topic we've talked about in older episodes of this shift in the industry a little bit, where it was like you'd get so many drafts of a script, and then that's why these scripts would be so amazing, because they've gone through so many drafts. And then now you get one where there's so many drafts and it's great, but then the reader or producer or whoever reads it, and because they've read it so many times, they feel it's stale, so they hire somebody new to do the script, and then think, oh, that's the one we'll go with because it is fresh or seems fresh, but but it's not the one that's been polished now. So you're going these, a lot of these films are being made with less, I guess, rewritten and polished scripts.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but we can. So I'm not keeping you too much longer. So how can people find you? Your website, your social medias.
Tony actually, speaking of mass exoduses, Tony made an exodus from social media for his own.
Yeah, like for me, it's just you can find us through like Jay's Instagram or.
My Instagram is nativebaby_J. I upload a lot of my artwork, just pieces that I work on. And then we have our website where we're selling our merchandise is nightmarekids.com. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy. We're kind of keeping to our own dwellings here. We don't super go out into social media.
Yeah, like, to be honest with you, like, Greg, I hate social media. I know that, like, it's what we need, and it's a way, to be connected. But, like, I look at it like, man, if someone needs to really connect with me, you can, like, I'll give you my email. Like, just for my own mental.
Of course. And so as part of, the main portion of this podcast, we talk about independent and obscure cinema, obscure horror movies, and more specifically. So, and we always like to kind of give our listeners a little recommendation on something that's a little bit more obscure to get eyes on. That are there certain projects that doesn't even have to be a movie, it can be a book, it can be whatever, but something that's obscure that you believe deserves to be, that more people should see.
This is a game we play with each other all the time. I don't know, you want to shoot out like your top 3 things you would recommend to somebody, like who wants to do horror?
There's a book that I just finished a series, which is Sight. I don't know if that's like more like on an independent level, but like Sight is something that like I really like. It's a story by a guy named Neil Schusterman. Story that takes place in the future. It's basically about we've conquered death, and the only thing that can kill us now is these sights. And it's a 3-series book with the Sight, Thunderhead, and the Toll, which is pretty awesome. I think now Universal might be in talks of doing a deal with Neil Schusterman to turn that into a film. So that's something that a lot of people talking about or that's on the radar that I think is pretty cool, dark.
Do you have any movie recommendations or anything?
Movie recommendations, I haven't really been watching too much stuff right now. I've been
I mean, I think you would say if you haven't had a chance to watch those from the hood, especially with what's going on now, it's horror mixed with life stuff for Black Americans.
Oh yeah, definitely. If we're talking about old, if you want to go dive back, definitely Tales from the Hood.
It could be any movie or any kind of time period, just something that you think more people or you believe that deserve more eyes on it, I guess.
Oh yeah, man. Then I would definitely say Tales from the Hood, just for what's going on today, in the world. It's a piece that has 4 different stories in a story, that just tells that just talks about what we're going through as African Americans. It's something that you can look at, and they were talking about back in the 90s, which can go to the Black Lives Matter movement. What's happening. see, like, you could see the correlations of, like, what happened to George Floyd and, like, you know, the things that we were talking about. Like, so it's like, where have we been and where are we going as a society, you know?
Mine has a touch less meaning than that, but for representation purposes, I'm Native American, and I recently watched the movie Blood Quantum. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Which one?
Blood Quantum.
Oh, yeah. Yep, I watched it. Yeah, it's great.
So it gets its name from the notion that when you know, the colonizers and everything were setting up demographic work and stuff like that, blood quantum was a term that they gave to kind of segregate what dictated what the Indian was. And so they kind of took it and flipped it on its head in the zombie genre. And so basically, it's in this world, the zombie outbreak happens, and Native Americans are the only people who are immune to it. And so it's just kind of a cool story. It's cool where they take it. I think good, disturbing imagery, and I'm not even the biggest zombie fan, but I enjoyed it, and it was good representation of the Native culture, too.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and I would back both of those projects. I haven't read the book that, Tony, you were talking about, but I'll always go with one of your recommendations. But it was,
man. Yeah, Craig, you will love it.
Yeah, I'll check it out. And it was, always a pleasure talking with both of you. And, you know, you're some of the most, at least, that I knew in LA, some of the most hardest working, passionate people. And,
likewise, man. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So, thank you for joining me, and we'd love to have you back anytime you want.
Anytime you want to call.
Yeah, man. Well, once we, I would love to, redo this again. Once we sign with our manager, we'll let you know, and, we can talk about our experiences that we are having in the industry post-Hollywood and COVID again,
Yeah, perfect.
Bloodhound Pix podcast is part of the Morbidly Beautiful Podcast Network. Produced by Josh Lee, Craig Drum, and Kyle Hintz. Music by Raymond Seed. Editing by Kyle Hintz.